Hi everyone, welcome to Sunya IS. In this lecture, we will discuss the interwar period which is between 1919 to 1938. Basically, this is your world history series, and in this particular lesson, we need to understand that what happened between the First World War and the Second World War. It is the time period when the First World War ended, and after the end of World War One, we saw the rise of League of Nations. There was a Treaty of Versailles, and so many other factors which contributed in few of the changes in society. Even the economic depression was there, so economical changes, political changes were also there. So we need to understand why these changes came and how some eradication of problems happened. One more point is that after the start of World War II, so this phase is between the end of World War II and starting of end of World War One and starting of World War Two. We need to understand a point that how the World War II could not be resisted. Why the need of World War II was there? Why it happened? Because already we had seen a war. It was a big war. So many countries got involved. Then what was the scenario in which World War II got triggered? Okay, that trigger factor we need to search, that source we need to search. Now the point is that why are we learning it today in the present scenario? Why we so much focus on these world wars and to know the sources? The reason is that in today's world we are in a global world and still the war like situations come in front. We know the trade war going on between China and America, so we need to link all these points together and see if it can work. So basically, if we talk about this interwar period, basically Great Depression is the biggest thing which was there, and you need to understand about this because this will impact the entire world. Okay, from America to Europe to Asia, everybody will be impacted. So, if we talk about the Great Depression, it had struck the United States in 1929. Okay, so this is a period when Hitler will also rise, and Hitler will utilize this opportunity of Great Depression as a leader in which he will use his good, skills, speaking skills. He was a great orator, and he will try that people become hopeful. He made new promises, he gave new ideas that I can bring something new for you and I can really take you out of this depression. Okay, so let's see why this depression was there. So Great Depression was from United States, coming from United States in 1929, but it will be spread throughout the Europe in the early 30s, and banks they began to collapse. Why this collapse was there? Because of World War One, because of waste of money and resources. A lot of money was diverted towards defense. Food grain supply was not there. Of course, the agriculture was suffering. So here, let's see other points. So despite the international loans, Germany and Europe as a whole, they plunged into depression, during which these currencies collapsed and all hope of stability was dashed. It was completely ended. So despite the efforts to stabilize the world prices, European employment, and to stabilize some good employment goals here, Europe remained mired in depression until the outbreak of World War II. So sometimes it is said that World War II was needed to cure this depression. There's no other way, because somehow you need to trigger something new in the economy so that people start getting involved in the demand and supply chain again. So one more thing was the League of Nations, which was working from 1920 to 1935. Now about this, we have already covered a good, big detailed chapter of this League of Nations. So just cover it briefly, just one slide for you. Basically, American President Woodrow Wilson, he intended that the League of Nations to be primary body of a new style of international relations based on the corporation of all the nations of the world. If you remember, we have discussed this, that why it was needed, what was the real scenario. So basically, they just wanted a platform where they can come and talk. So the league was to be centered in Geneva, Switzerland, and it was a neutral location so that nobody will think that, this country is having more influence. They are trying to work more on it. They have more ideas. They are running it in their own way. So somehow a neutral location was chosen. Just give me a moment. Yes. Okay, so league was to be centered in Geneva, right? Fine. Now, small nations as well as the large nations here, they were asked to join the League of Nations. However, Germany was not the member initially, but Germany became the member later. So, dependent on their acceptance of the covenant of the league, because there was a rule, okay, there was a regulation that how the league will work, how it will function. So, all those countries which accepted, they became the member. So, the League of Nations, it first met in November 1920, and 42 nations were represented at this first meeting. 42 nations, but the size will increase, and gradually you will see more members joining the League of Nations. Now, here the absence of Germany, Russia, United States was there. Now these are the big players, of course you need them. Germany, it was identified as the aggressor because it was always blamed on Germany that due to the German policies only the World War One happened. So Germany was not here, and it was barred from the admission at first, but later it got admitted, it got the approval, and it became the member in 1926. Okay. Then if we talk about Russia, Russia is now known as the Soviet Union here. So was not invited. Okay, now means what? We are talking about the time of 1929, the period of Great Depression. That I'm telling you. Right now, there is no USSR. Today, in this present time, we have no USSR. Right? We have Russia, a different country, and some other states are there. They follow socialistic principles, but USSR is not there. Fine. So when it is said that now the Soviet Union, it is about the time of 1929. Okay, because you know that after the Russian Revolution, in the end, Lenin, he started the USSR, and it got more stability under the government of Stalin. Right? We have covered it in the last class. Fine. So Russia, which became Soviet Union at that time, it was now invited to join the league due to radical policies of new communist government. They wanted to see what kind of changes they are bringing, what new goals are there, what new scenarios are there. The Soviet Union finally became a member of league in 1935, and in November 1919 the US Senate voted against the accepting membership to the league, and the nation never joined at all. Okay, so here you see that US was not interested. Why? I told you, because it was following the policy of isolation. It said that we don't want this membership at all, and we don't know why the World War One, World War situations or any trigger factors are there. We are just focusing on our own business. We need to focus on the economy, and we are not interested in these involvements. It was a very diplomatic decision, you can say. Okay, now the League of Nations operated through three agencies, as I have already discussed with you. Number one, the Assembly, General Assembly, the Security Council, and the Secretariat. Fine. So these three organizations were there: Assembly, Council, Secretariat. This we have covered. So quickly, just see it at a glance. The Assembly met annually. General Assembly, it was of all the points together, like I told you, GS, General Studies, you do. So it is a General Assembly. It means they will be trying to discuss each and everything briefly. Okay, so it was having the delegation from each member nation, and each member had one vote here. So general discussions were there on each and every topic. Now the council was also there. Council was composed of 4 permanent members and 4 non-permanent members, and it was like a cabinet. Okay, and they used to take the major decisions, major decision making body it was. and it had some executive powers also. The council was responsible for the prevention of war through disarmament and resolving disputes and supervising the mandates of the league. Okay, then we had the third body, secretariat. So it was the league civil service preparing the agenda for assembly. So they were like the backbone. Okay, like today we have cabinet secretary, the topmost IS officers, they become it. They become to achieve it and they get this goal. So the idea of secretary and secretariat. So that is like a bureaucracy working for the agenda and the council. They will also serve the clerical purpose thing, clerical jobs or office work. Everything will be maintained. They will prepare documents, they will do things for the publication. Okay, so there was a Geneva Protocol which was there and it provided for compulsory arbitration of international disputes by the league. So it said that we will try to resolve all the issues in the world from now. So this proposal was brought down by British delegation whose overseas colonial leaders feared that they would be dragged into European affairs by Geneva Protocol. Okay, so this is a very important thing that British delegation, they thought that somehow this Geneva Protocol can harm their colonial ideas, okay, or their profit orientation somehow. Basically, these all were businessmen, right? They just wanted their own profit. Now, the new point, which we have never discussed yet, is the Italian fascism during interwar years. Fascism and Nazism is a very important concept here, and it really triggered the entire world. It was a very autocratic style of rule, and they just wanted the entire control in their own hand. They were not ready to listen to anybody. Just to understand it, if you want to know, for example, the present scenario which is there in North Korea, that is something which can tell you a similar belief and idea related to fascism and Nazism. Then you can understand if you can relate it with that. So here, from 1919 to 1938, Italian fascism was there. And if we talk about the cause for the rise of fascism in Italy, discontentment among the people of Italy it was after the World War One, as they were disillusioned by the term of Paris Peace Conference. They were not, clear that how the growth will be. Okay, so somehow this issue was there, and the attempt of defeated soldiers to regain glory it was for them, because they wanted to get their power back, their glory back. Once it is always said the army men, they are never on leave, right? They always have that enthusiasm in their mind. So similar situations were there. Discontentment among the capitalist class was there, and landlords due to the increasing influence of socialism, as they wanted to do their own business, the trade, so they wanted to work in that way. Ultimately, things were not going as per their beliefs. So yes, there was this problem also. So discontentment is there everywhere, with the public, with general, people, with masses, with army men. They all wanted their power and their glory back. Okay, so that's why they were just trying to achieve it. Now, if we talk about the factors behind the rise of Mussolini in Italy, you will see Mussolini and Hitler, they will be having similar agendas. Okay, so it is all about getting ultra nationalist. I told you, anything should never be too much. Okay, and it was too much here. So Italian ultra nationalist, it was grieved by the Treaty of Saint Germain, and in this treaty they believed that Italy was cheated because there was a violation of secret treaty of Rome. As I told you, during the First World War, so many secret alliances and gossips were there. So Mussolini, he became a leader. He promised them that he would remove such wrongs by rejecting certain provisions of the treaty. And being an opportunist politician, he made promise to almost every social group in Italy that I will be working for you. Like middle class was worried about the law and order situation, so they got assurance from Mussolini. Students were worried about their career, their unemployment conditions, so they were promised the jobs. Industrialists were worried about the labor strike, and workers were worried about the lockouts. So they all got one hope and insurance that things will be changed and he will, bring a better future for Italy. So the success of Mussolini, it lay in the fact that he gave assurance and promises to every class. That's why he is also known as a great leader. I told you, for a great leader or for a great king, it is very, very important that they think about everybody. Okay, they need to be very tolerant and they need to think about everyone. It can never be that you just plan to go in just in a certain way and for only a certain class. No, you need to think about everybody, you need to plan for everyone. Okay, all rounder you need to be, right? And the policies also need to be all rounder. So when you make something, it should not be only for one a part of society. If you will only work for poor, that will be only a pro poor policy, but it may harm the rich people, rich business class. If you will only work for the rich people and business class, then there will be no harmony with the poor people. If you will only talk about the middle class, then you will lose the essence of the ground reality of poverty and the, extravagant lifestyle which is in the rich class. So ultimately it should be a combination of everything, and you need to have a balanced approach, you need to have a balanced law which can never harm any particular community or class of society. Because however Karl Marx used to say that we want to achieve a classless society, but this ideology is very hard to be achieved. Ultimately you will always have some classes, the difference of poor and rich will always be there. You can't eliminate it completely, nobody can eliminate it completely. So this is a basic idea which we all need to understand. Okay, so here the success of Mussolini, it lay in the fact that he gave assurance to every class for some gain. So during this time, communism was progressing in Italy, and Mussolini, with his black shirt volunteers, he attacked the communists on streets. So he was very radical in his approach and very ruthless also. Okay, very, very ruthless. So he earned the sympathy of propertied class. People thought that, okay, fine, there is a leader who can think about us. Even when fascism was progressing fast in Italy, the Liberal and Communist Party, they could not make a joint front to counter fascism, because people at that time, they had a mindset that they started liking it. Because see, if they compared it with their present situation or past situation, they found it better. They saw a better future, they became optimistic with fascism. So mass support is always important. See, ultimately no ideology can win, nothing can grow much, and it can never survive for long if masses don't support it or if masses go against it. Somehow masses in these areas, in Italy and later in the Germany also, you will see during the rise of Hitler, that people had a good support to these ideologies. People understood it, and people, they became hopeful that, okay, something better can happen. The Liberal Party was as much scared with the Communist Party as it was with the Fascist Party. So, of course, this was also there. So, in election of 1921, Mussolini's Fascist Party backed 35 seats, but it was short of majority, but it was still a great achievement. So Mussolini brought a virtual coup to seize the power. He thought that, okay, fine, I can use the army, my soldiers, and by this coup I can get the seat. So it is like everything is fair in love and war, and he was in a war and he just wanted to get this position. So in 1922, in association with 5,000 black shirt volunteers, he carried a march to Rome, and the government of King Victor Emmanuel III submitted before him and invited Mussolini to form the government. So, in this way, he got the legitimacy, and 1922 Mussolini became the PM of Italy, and he started running his idea of fascism very clearly. Okay, so this was the journey of Mussolini, and here, if we understand the consolidation of power under Mussolini, like how it happened, so he declared himself to be the head of education department. So he started from education department first. He controlled education, he wanted to control the mindset of public, like how people will think, what they will do. Okay, then he became the head of judicial department, and then he became the head of army. So total 8 departments he headed. Fine. Then he dismissed the elected bodies, like he dismissed the municipalities, corporations in town, cities, and then he started to appoint officers like Podesta. Officers who were like him, okay, the way he used to approach the things. So Podesta came. Similar things you will see that Hitler will also do. Hitler will first, come to get the winning in election, and after getting elected he will dismantle the democracy. Here similar situations are seen. Okay, now the officer reported directly to the central government, so they were like the agent of central government. Okay, so by 1928 election procedure, it was almost scrapped, it was almost ended, there was no more election or election like things. Now Italian people had to elect only those members who were in the list of members nominated by the fascist party. So it is like a complete communist agenda where the government is only deciding that who can be there. Okay, only one party rule can be there. So fascist party, they regulated the scholars and artists as well, and they were supposed to glorify the state and the party. They wanted people to take this idea very positively, that nothing is being wrong. Okay, even if it is an autocratic style of rule, it is justified. Okay, it was legitimized. So they wanted to glorify their power and they were trying everything to do it. So yes, in this way glorification was happening. So there was a change in educational curriculum as well. It was altered in such a way that it was reduced to a single text prescribed by the fascist party. So as I told you that initially first he became the head of educational department because he wanted to influence the mind. He wanted to control the mindset of public and the rising class. Okay, he knew the future of Italy, and that's why he wanted future in his own hand, and he wanted to control the mind. I told you, money, mind, muscle power, these three M's, these three M powers are very important. And if you have any of it in your control, then you can rule and you can, win things. So it was happening similarly here also. Fascist party in Italy created a separate labor front, and capitalists were supposed to talk to the workers through this front only. So when the World Economic Depression was there from 1929 to 30, when it surfaced, the fascist party presented a solution to it in form of corporate state system, and it was partially based on medieval guild system and syndicalism. Okay, so George Selin was there, who used to understand this idea of guild system where groups, powerful groups, used to work in a synergy, helping each other, each and every member together, and then making good decisions. So under this system, economy was divided into 7 regions, and in every region a corporation of employers used to work, and those of employees was formed. Okay, so in this way employers and employees used to work, and in this way the working started in the local level. Fine. So here the basic objective was to organize the whole production under the state, because I told you in a communist government the idea of production, what to produce, how to produce, when to produce, how to distribute, where to store it, everything, all the major decisions will be taken by the government only. Okay, so it is under the state. So under the state, it used to put a check over the class conflict also, that rich and poor should not fight, they should always understand the things. A member of fascist party headed these corporations to resolve the issues, but in spite of his best of the efforts, Italy was overwhelmed. Okay, and Italy was overwhelmed by the world economic depression because, of course, they were not prepared for it. Now, the state was inclined to take the support of youths, and the youths were suffering from severe problems of unemployment. They wanted some opportunity, so Mussolini decided to take military adventure. He thought that, okay, I will give them a job in army, let's fight, let's have a war. So in this way they started a war. He attacked the Abyssinia, Ethiopia, in October 1935, and then he sent nearly 3 lakh youths in the war as soldiers. So he just utilized the manpower in a different way, you can say. Okay, because he knew that I have a population, I have a manpower, I can utilize it, I can use them in economy, or I can use them in the war. So this idea, this kind of strategy he had. Okay, now let's talk about Mussolini's foreign policy. So it was to nullify the unjust provisions of the Treaty of Saint Germain, which was imposed on them. Basically, it was again a humiliating treaty, right? So everything was not justified. There were many points in which disruptions were there. So he was also inclined to create a big empire in the Mediterranean region and in Africa. So in peace conference, Paris Peace Conference, Italy was not offered fume port as it was a disputed region between Italy and Yugoslavia, but they wanted this fume port for their export and import to increase their trade and commerce and to have more influence on the Mediterranean region. So this region was declared to be independent. But in 1924, by concluding a treaty with Yugoslavia, Italy captured the fume port and then they started trading more. It was a good benefit for them. Okay. So these foreign policies Mussolini used to follow. Likewise, in Paris Peace Conference, Italy had demanded its patronage on Albania, but Allied powers refused it. So at that time, what he used to do, whenever he used to demand something, they knew that okay, we are not getting it right now. Fine, we will later make a new policy. We'll try to do it. We'll try to achieve it in some other way. Okay, so on the basis of Treaty of Triana, Italy got the patronage over Albania. Then Mussolini also invaded Corfu in Greece and captured it. Under the British pressure, he had to vacate the region, but he got 5 crore lira in compensation. So 5 crore lira means 5 crore was a big amount, and yes, he got it. So basically, by making some aggressive foreign policies and by taking some risk, he could raise a lot of money, and that money was utilized to come out of the economic depression. So that economic crisis, which was there in 1929, about which we started, this crisis resulted in high unemployment in Germany. And by 1932, there were 6 million unemployed men in Germany. So it will boost the growth of Nazis and the fall of Weimar Republic, the government which used to work there. And with the rise of Nazis, the French attitude towards Germany hardened because already Padosi problem was there. I told you France and Germany, they were neighbors, and France was involved in the First World War against Germany. France was with the Britain, so France and Britain they had a team, and of course here Germany, was very aggressive in the nature. So France wanted to be peaceful. They wanted no fight. They wanted to be secured on the borders. So when this Nazi party came, the French attitude got hardened. French became more insecure now. They were like already, these people were furious. Now they will become more furious. Okay, so Nazis they thrived on an extreme nationalist propaganda, and they wanted to bring all German areas into reach. Okay, so they wanted it to come together in one area, and they Hitler basically gave one slogan also, that one people, one culture, one nation, one leader. The one leader is the Hitler as a leader. So this idea, this approach was followed by Hitler. So basically here the most important point which you need to understand is that Hitler will also follow the same kind of ideologies like Mussolini did. Okay, whatever Mussolini had, like the way we understood it, the kind of aggressive ideas he had, the way he used to work, everything is inspiring Hitler to do the same. So yes, Nazi Germany during the interwar period, this is very important. And here you need to understand the idea of Nazism and the problem which Hitler started. So it is very interesting. Okay, this lesson is very interesting for you. This part will be very much useful for the exam also. So from 1919 to 1938, if you will look at the period, this is the period of Nazi Germany. And why the causes are there? Like why this Nazism got a rise? Why this problem was there? It was due to the humiliating Treaty of Versailles. This I have already discussed with you. Okay, because a widespread hatred among the German ultra nationalist was there, because Germany was blamed for everything. Germany was treated like a culprit, aggressor, uh, like a negative mark, negative spot on the world. So they gave support to the Nazi party because Nazi party was very much new in the ideas, aggressive, and they wanted some changes in which they were not relaxed. Okay, they could go out of their comfort zone. So the Great Depression of 1929 to 30, it created a favorable environment for Nazism, and the depression, it ensures growing popularity of Social Democratic Party in the Germany. So you see that the Democratic Party, this social democratic party was growing, and this party terrified the German capitalists, because German capitalists knew that they won't be able to do their business, and the German junker class, means the landlords, they were also confused because they will need to pay more taxes. So these people started to strengthen the hands of Hitler. They thought that Hitler can help us fighting this party. So, according to some critics, the rise of Nazism was inherent in German history itself. In fact, Germany was having a long tradition of militarism, military warfare, being aggressive, ruthless. This is a point which Germany always had in their, ideas since the time of history, like since ages they used to follow it. They always had this kind of agendas with them. They always used to work in this way only. Okay, so fine, this is something which was going on. Now, if we talk about the factors behind the rise of Hitler, there was a formation of German Nationalist Workers' Socialist Party, which is popularly known as Nazi Party. So, German Nationalist Workers' Socialist Party, this you should write. Please write this, because sometimes students get confused that what is Nazi Party. So, write it down. Let me have some water. You write it down. Write this point. Give me a moment. I'll be back. And then you also write this point also. He introduced, Hitler introduced 25 points program in which almost every class of Germany was given some promise. This point also you should write. Okay? Fine. So now here, if we talk about Germany, this particular part is very important for us, because here you will see the rise of Hitler and rise of his ideology, that how he became so popular. Okay, what was the idea? So basically, the German Nationalist Worker Socialist Party became Nazi Party. Hitler joined it and became its leader by 1921. During the World War One, Hitler was a soldier. He was in the army. He used to command, and then he knew about the militarism. There was a soldier in his heart always. From inside, he was like a soldier. So he used to speak very well, and he had the power to align everybody with his voice. So, yes, he started to encourage a mass hatred against the Treaty of Versailles and created a large following for his cult. And basically, it was already there. So, he just utilized it. He knew that people hate the idea of Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles. People don't like it, people don't want to accept it. He knew it. So he just utilized it. Okay. Now, in his 25-point programs, he gave some promise to every class, and he was with everybody. For example, the ultra nationalists were given the promise of breaking out from the clauses of war guilt, employment for youths. Capitalists were promised to get security against the workers unrest. So of course everything was coming out. Okay. So promise of getting a good future was important thing, and it somehow made everybody believe on his eyes. Above all, he continued to give hate speech against Jews. I don't want to take any names, but you must be knowing that there are few leaders from some religious groups. They always give hate speeches. Okay, they are politicians, but they always try to give hate speeches only. Most of the times in their ideas, you will see that they want to influence people with these hate speeches. Okay, so this above all, he continued to give hate speeches against the Jews, communists, and the November criminals, Jesuits, Roman Catholics. So basically, he was against anybody who was not a pure Nordic Aryan. Okay, he gave the idea of this, that pure blooded Nordic Aryans are the real Germans and they should only live in this place. They are only having the right to survive. Okay, so Hitler was inspired by the success of Mussolini, who seized the power and formed the government in 1922 by the means of a coup. So he knew that even after not getting a majority, with the power of army, with the support of masses, he could work. So he also brought a coup against German government in 1923 in Munich. It is the area where the coup happened, and it turned to be a failure. It was not a success like Mussolini, so Hitler was arrested and he was put to a trial. He was given imprisonment of 1 year, and he composed his famous autobiography, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, in jail during this time only, which is a very famous autobiography. Now, after coming out of jail, he changed his strategy and he decided to seize power through democratic means and then dismantling the democracy itself. Okay, so this was a new thing. So he said that I will just, follow the power through democracy, and after the democratic means, after seizing the power, I will demolish the democracy. This idea was there. So he started white propaganda against the treaty, and then he encouraged the hate politics, of course, because he wanted to win, and it was working fine because you have all the types of people, and that time, unfortunately, Hitler had more aggressive people, so their ideas matched with Hitler. So Hitler's actual success was ensured after the economic depression because it will create a wide impact in social class, a lot of unemployment and issue. And I told you that the motivation will only work when you are in depression. When you are already fine doing good, then you don't need any motivation. You will be self motivated to do everything. But here people wanted improvement, they needed motivation, and that was given by Hitler. So Hitler utilized it. Hitler decided to spread the ideology even in the countryside, in the rural areas. He started campaigning in those regions also. So in the election of 1932, he got clear majority, and then that president Hindenburg in Germany invited Hitler for the post of chancellor. Chancellor is like the PM in India. Okay, so he formed the government in January 1933. Then there was a Lausanne conference in 1932. Here, Britain, France, Germany, they, all came together, and here they freed Germany. They said, okay, we will give you some concessions, that we are giving freedom to you from paying most of the remaining repressions. The war indemnity was reduced, and this was because due to the Great Depression, because everybody knew that already no money is there to survive. So of course the war indemnity should not be imposed. So on the humanitarian grounds it was done. So there were 6 million people unemployed in Germany by 1932. So this was decided by Britain and France to let go the idea of getting more money. Okay. Now, when Hitler came to rule, he started consolidation of his power. He invoked the Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution and imposed emergency in Germany. So basically, he started emergency. So when President Hindenburg passed away in 1934, Hitler consciously amalgamated the post of chancellor, and then he became, he thought that if I will amalgamate the chancellor post and the president post, then I can make a combined post, and then I can become a president and chancellor together. So in June 1936, he committed a great purge within the party and eliminated the members of all the socialist temperament. So it is known as the knight with the long knives. He then, eliminated everybody who could not go in his way. And in 1938, he purged the army as well. The, elimination of unwanted officers was there. So he changed everything. He changed the party, he changed the workers, members, army. Now everything was on the Hitler's way, the way Hitler wanted it, the way he wanted to support. So like Mussolini, he too brought changes in educational curriculum. So it is rightly said that educational curriculums and guns, which formed a complete fascist government. In education, he started influencing the mind of kids. He also commanded the artists and scholars like Mussolini to glorify the Nazi party. Above all, he successfully solved the problem of unemployment in Germany by creating a public works department, PWD, and he started wider military conscription also. So he wanted people to join military to get trained so that they could be utilized. So in this way, he converted the whole German economy into a war economy in which they wanted to just capture new region to gain more resources, to get more money, and to finance their home economy. So this kind of colonial and expansionist ideologies was there. So for women, he took a very tough stand and recommended Kinder, Kirch, Kach, means kid, church, kitchen. You should only focus on your kids, go to church, be religious, and focus on your kitchen. Don't look here and there. Any kind of, affair or, relation, marriage, any kind of idea should not be there in the mind. Religiously also and socially also it was imposed. So they were either suspended from the higher posts, all the women, or for the same works their salary was reduced. So in 1935, on the basis of Nuremberg law, he started to deprive Jews from the citizenship of Germany. He said that Jews are not fine as a community. Some religious conflicts and clashes were there. So he started killing Jews. He killed many Jews in the gas chamber. So finally, in 1938, he launched the riots against Jews. And of course, the diary of Anne Frank is very, very popular. If you remember the 13 years old girl diary, where she was a Jew and she used to live, like she used to hide with the family. So the way she lived during this part, that is written in his personal diary. If we talk about the Hitler's foreign policy, it was basically shaped by domestic policy of Hitler. So we know Hitler came from to power in Germany, and from that Hitler created a war economy, right? So naturally Germany will go towards aggressive foreign policy. So it was guided even by a racist ideas which are expressed in his secret book, and he emphasized the racial superiority of Nordic Aryans, pure German Aryans. He considered that we will, who only are pure are only Germans. So other people should be eliminated, blacks, gypsies, handicaps, all, old people, they were eliminated. So being a competent race, he explained that Germans had been assigned limited space in Europe, while even after being of inferior racial origin, the Slavs had occupied a larger chunk. Means others are having more area. So Slavs should be expelled from the region. They should be, expelled out of the Germany, and Germany should expand more. So this idea was there. And then World Disarmament Conference was there. It was held in 1932 to 33. In this League Covenant, all members, they agreed to decrease the armaments. They said that we should not focus much on defense right now because the entire world is suffering. So it was only Germany which had to disarm following the Treaty of Versailles, but now everybody said that we will follow some limitation in the arms and ammunitions. Now Germany demanded that either all should disarm or it should be allowed to at least have a parity with France in term of armament, because with France there was a neighbor problem going on, right? So they said that Britain, Italy, everybody, all other countries, they sympathized with Germany that Germany is right. Germany wants to be, in a good competition with France, and it's just saying that we all should have same, things, or the rule should be applied similarly and with the same equal ideas to everyone. Finally, when the French did not budge, Hitler withdrew Germany out of the conference. Now it went out of the league, and from the League of Nations when it came out. Now, so from the conference also, World Disarmament Conference, and from the League of Nations, Germany withdrew both in 1933, which was a clear indication that now Hitler is ready for Second World War. Now, at this point of time, Britain was not saying anything. Britishers said that, see, Germany is very aggressive and we should not make it more aggressive. So Britishers, took it very lightly. But in reality, it should never be a light stance. Germany was planning. And why? Because of this humiliating treaty. We have already covered the Treaty of Versailles. So the treaty seemed to satisfy the big three only, US, Britain, and France, since in their eyes, whatever just and peace was, as it kept Germany very weak, yet strong enough to stop the spread of communism, but kept the French border with Germany very safe. So another German attack and anything could not be there. It created the organization League of Nations that would end the warfare throughout the world, but it was unsuccessful. So it left a mood of anger throughout Germany. Germany was very very angry. It was unfairly treated, so they hated this clause of blaming them completely, and of course they wanted to go against this treaty. So now in the next chapter, we will discuss the Second World War and how Hitler, with his strategies made it, how his foreign policies will be very, very aggressive, in what ways Second World War could not be cured, could not be resisted, and later in the end, you will see a different level of suspense where USA will enter and a new chapter will open up. Okay, so I hope guys you enjoyed today's lecture. It was recorded. I could not take it live today due to some of my commitments and heavy schedule. But no worries. I don't have a tight schedule tomorrow. So, of course, I can come live again tomorrow. So, 9 p.m. I'll see you guys again. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you so much for coming. See you then. Take care. Bye bye.